I will never forget my first year of applying for scholarships where I applied and applied and I just would never hear back. It got to where I was almost convinced that there just was no such thing as scholarships. If this is you and your student, if you are wondering when will you hear back from scholarships, it's important to understand that some scholarships are legitimate, some are not. I'll tell you how to understand the difference. But also, it's important to understand how scholarship committees work when announcing their winners. So, in today's video, I'm going to discuss when scholarships will announce their winners for their coveted scholarship dollars. Now, make sure you hit subscribe because every single week I release a new strategy on how to pay for college without student loan debt, including strategies that will help improve your students' chances of getting that yes response from the committees that we want. Hey there, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System, where we redefine paying for college to help families build strong financial futures. And one of our primary strategies is scholarships. This is my bread and butter, so I have seen this topic and this question time and time again. So let's dive in. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to responses from scholarships, we have to make sure they're legitimate. If it is not a legitimate scholarship, we're not going to hear back, right? So one of the important things is understanding how do we find legitimate, competitive scholarships versus the scams. So what I'm going to do for that one, since it's not really the topic of this video, is just point you to my free webinar. So I have a free webinar. It's about an hour long. You can register at thescholarshipsystem.com/free webinar. And there I will show you how to identify the legitimate ones versus the scam. So make sure you check that out. It also gives you tons of tips on how to just find scholarships that your student can apply to. So maybe your student hustled, they already found a list, they already applied. Maybe they watched our video on getting a scholarship, how to increase your chances of actually winning it. And if you haven't seen that video, we will link to it in the description as well. But now maybe they just hear crickets. This is not uncommon, and it's maybe not even a bad thing. This might just mean that they are still working on it, okay? But when it comes to scholarships, some are very transparent on when they'll be announcing the winners, and some are not. So this all depends on the number of applications they received, the number of committee members that are reviewing them. I remember with the scholarship system, we give out scholarships every year. And one year, I don't know what it was, our scholarship application just went viral and we had so many applicants to go through. So that could be the case too. So this can cause the time frame to vary sometimes. Sometimes communication gets lost. So maybe they have announced it, but it hasn't reached the person. They haven't heard back. So this could be a thing as well. For example, we have emailed our winners before, and once one of the students said that they didn't get the email after we followed up multiple times, finally got in touch with them. So there is, it's not an official process. There isn't an official database or communication method. So it really can vary scholarship to scholarship. Now, some committees will give scholarship recipients a deadline to respond. This means that they have to accept or have to confirm receiving the congratulations email or letter, however it is that they're communicating. They have to respond back by a certain date. Otherwise, they will move to the next person. Now, some scholarship committees will give a deadline as to when the student has to reply back saying that they received their congratulations email or communication, and they have to say, yes, okay, I accept the scholarship. So if that's the case, if they don't hear back, then they'll move to the next person. So again, this would push back the deadline as well. Now, with our annual scholarship, we actually take about 2 weeks to go through the applicants, and we do publish the date in which we will announce the winners by. We also have a blog post where we post the winners so that anyone that applied and didn't receive it, they can see, okay, they were chosen. So if this is the case, if your student finds a scholarship where it clearly says we will announce the winner by this date, I highly recommend setting a reminder for that date to go back with the URL, so it's very quick and easy to go back and just check the website to see if they posted the winners. Maybe set it for a day or two past the deadline, just to give them a little bit of leeway. Now, if your student is not selected for the scholarship, they may not receive any kind of communication. So in the scholarship system with our scholarships, we do not let the people who were not selected know. It's just too much. Like I mentioned mentioned instead we post the winners on the blog so people can go back and look and say, okay, they did select their winners. I didn't get it. But it's just too much to communicate with each and every applicant. And I would say that a lot of scholarships, they function this way. Now, comment below, what was the longest that your student heard back from a scholarship? So not one that they never heard back from, but what was the longest time frame in between an application deadline and when they did hear back with a response? Let me know in the comments. I'd be curious to see, and I'm sure other parents would love to see it as well. Now, before I move on, I do want to say that when it comes to communicating with the scholarship committee, many will these days reply through email. That's going to be the primary source of communication. So with all of this, all the different timelines and everything, make sure your student is watching that email that they use. This is why during our webinar, we actually talk about creating a separate email for this process, because then they can actually keep an eye on it in way more detail than the one that they're getting all their school emails and their friends' emails and whatever through it. So we really make sure that they're watching this, because email is going to be the primary method of communication, but some committees will actually communicate through a letter. Some will send out a physical congratulations letter. So we may want to keep an eye on the mail as well. I would say that phone is not often used, but these are the primary methods of communication for a scholarship committee. Okay, so let's get into, say it's been a couple months and we don't have any emails, no letters, just nothing about the winners on social media. What can we do if there's just crickets? I recommend sometimes students taking a proactive approach. This can be a simple email to the committee. This first off should be very simple, sweet, and short, more than a sentence, but not an entire storybook. It should also be from the student, not the parent. We want the student to take the initiative. I wouldn't really recommend calling unless there's a clear number that's specifically dedicated to the scholarship. A lot of times the scholarships that we are finding are for a specific business that's doing other things than just giving out scholarships. Now, if it's just a scholarship foundation, their phone number, that might make sense, but typically an email would do. Now, the other thing about this, contacting them, is if they are still deciding and they're on the fence, this can actually help or hurt your student. So you should review this with your student and make sure that they're communicating professionally. And I will tell you right now, I actually have interviewed scholarship committees that have given out millions of dollars in the past, and this was something that they talked about. They've had students where they wrote a horrible, just an email, basically like a text message where the words weren't correct, they were shortened, and it was just terrible, and it left an impression on them. And then on the other hand, they had an email from a student that was very well written, it was eloquent, correct, no grammatical errors, respectful, etc., and that stuck with them as well. So this can really make a mark on a committee member if the email is done well. So that said, don't be afraid to have your student contact them if it has been quiet, if it was a scholarship that took a lot of work. Just do understand that perhaps they just received a ton of submissions and they just haven't been able to communicate with everyone. So that said, if your student does get a rejection letter, it can be very unmotivating. So actually, I have a whole separate video all about scholarship rejection letters, how to stay motivated, and what to do with this letter. How can we actually turn it into a win? So again, all of these important free resources for you are going to be linked in the description, but I would definitely check out that video. You can also probably click it somewhere on the screen. But the biggest thing here is just not to give up. Many of our students, they will have to submit a lot of applications in the front, and then when they win one, then they have to submit less and less to see wins. So this is something I explained in more detail in that free webinar I mentioned at the beginning. So make sure that you attend that free webinar, and I will show you what I'm talking about, where it just takes less effort as we go. But that said, at the beginning, it will take a lot of applications. You cannot just have your students submit 3, 4, 5 applications and expect to get a free ride. It's just not how it works, especially if they are legitimate scholarships. They're typically smaller dollar, they need to add up, and it just takes time to really fine-tune that essay. Now, if your student does receive a letter or an email congratulating them, first off, I want to say congratulations. That is so exciting, and I bet it's just the beginning. So for me, that first win, it was $500, which wasn't that much, but it lit a fire. It got me so excited. So I just want to say that that first win, when they do finally communicate it, it can be so exciting and so motivating. So ride that momentum with your student. One of the last things I want to say with this is we really recommend to our students writing a thank you letter. Inside the scholarship system, our online course, we have specific, actually a pre-created template for this on how to write a thank you letter. So that is a big part of really getting money year after year. So that's all about what step 6 is all about in the scholarship system. It's all about how do we bring in more and more money each year. That thank you letter is one of those tricks. Okay, so as you can see, there can be many reasons why a student doesn't hear back from a committee. Maybe they haven't announced it yet. Maybe they are delayed because someone's not responding. Maybe their communication got lost in email or mail. So there can be many different reasons. Hang in there, but we do recommend reaching out if it has been quite a while and your student has a way to reach out to them. But hopefully they will be getting those yes letters soon enough. All right, that said, don't forget to register for that free training I mentioned. Also, make sure you hit subscribe because every week we're releasing a new strategy to help your student graduate from college with as little debt as possible. And I will see you in the next video.